Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from Our Living Room. I'm your host, Sarah Knopp, and tonight I'm going to be joined by Jared Grant, who is the worship pastor at Stairway Church. We have a really special episode lined up for you tonight where we're going to be talking about getting back to the heart of worship. And with everything that's going on in our world at the moment, I can't think of a better topic for us to talk about tonight. And I just want to start this episode by saying a big thank you to you all for giving some of your time to us tonight. I know there's a lot of competing priorities going on, so we really value your time and want to thank you for jumping on board. Don't forget that if you want to contribute, you can write comments on the stream. You can ask questions to Jared on the stream as well, and we'll make sure that we come and check those questions at the end so that we can answer any questions that you might have. So without further ado, welcome my host, oh my goodness, my guest, Jared Grant. Here we go. I got it out eventually.
Glad to be here.
Welcome, Jared. So Jared, tonight we're going to be talking a bit about the heart of worship, and so it's ideal that we've got you as our guest tonight because you are the worship pastor at Stairway. So can you just tell us a bit about, before we get started on the questions tonight, can you just tell us a bit about your background as a worship pastor and what brought you to this role at Stairway?
Yeah, for sure. I think everything sort of changed in my world when I was an early teenager and I picked up a guitar for the first time and not for the first time, but I found my voice on my guitar. It was like I strummed a few chords and I began to realize that it was more than it was the expression of my heart. It was actually a pathway to his presence. And I felt like what maybe David felt like when he was sitting on the backside of a hill somewhere taking care of some sheep, where when he played his worship, it was almost like he could feel that God was right there with him. And so from there, I sort of got messed up because everything else in life just didn't touch me like that. And so a pursuit in music, in worship, and building what's important to God has become important to me. And so I love the church. I love the people of God. I love people, and I want to be able to serve them so well. And I guess I found my way as a teenager into Bible college, and my parents planted a church called Hope Generation that for 9 years, it really shaped my life and my passion as I discovered my voice as a worship leader, as a songwriter, writer, and also as just as a leader, learning how to lead people and shape environments for worship. And I guess I found something that made me come alive. And I'm really blessed now that I get to do something that makes me come alive in serving the church and for worship, and also provide for my family, which is amazing to be full-time at Stairway and with an amazing team of musicians and singers. A real thrill.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously at the moment, we've got quite a different setup when it comes to worship and church on a Sunday. And yourself, along with the worship team and the leadership team at church, have had quite the challenge in trying to work out what worship looks like when everyone's at home in isolation and when we can't meet together as a church within our church building. So can you just tell us a bit about what that's been like to go on that journey as a leadership team and as a worship team to really change up the way that we go about doing worship on a Sunday?
Yeah, for sure. It's been an incredible opportunity, isn't it, that we've had to sort of press reset a little bit in the way we gather, because obviously we can't gather physically at the moment, but there's this opportunity to gather in a cyber forum. And we as a team, I guess, have been on a journey because we've been streaming our services for a long time. But in some senses, it was just capturing what was happening in the room as opposed to actually trying to capture a stream that was engaging and was helping serve people in their lounge rooms and wherever they are listening and watching. And so I guess we went on a journey of discovering and exploring, and we're trying still. There's this big learning curve of how do we build incredible opportunities of connection for people with the Lord in worship, in the ministry of the word, and people just connecting with one another somehow in a way that is totally different to what we're used to. I love the environment of gathered worship and prayer and preaching. For me, I love that environment, but it's been so great in some ways to have a moment where everything has changed.
Yes.
everything, one week we went from, having the next year planned out of, services that were coming, conferences that were coming, album projects that were on the go. And then the next week, it's literally like everything's up in the air. And
Yeah.
we had to see that, hey, God's actually laid some treasure in the field for us to discover. He's wanting to do something fresh in his heart of his church at the moment. And even as we're sort of starting now to head back towards some semblance of normal, of some of the restrictions easing, it's really easy to possibly just think that it's all going to go back to normal, when actually I think there's a real agenda the Lord has for us in
Yeah.
resetting the way we approach worship, resetting the way we approach church as the people of God.
Yeah, amazing. So within this time, has there been anything that's surprised you in the kind of pleasant surprise way, in regards to the way that our congregation and other visitors who have watched our services have responded to what we have been able to do online on a Sunday?
Oh, look, I'm constantly impressed with the passion that our community has for the presence of God. I am constantly encouraged as well. Like, we have an incredible community who constantly will send emails and text messages, just really thanking the worship team for how they serve week in and week out. So that's been a real blessing, and we feel so supported by our church community. Um, I think it's been really tough as well, in the sense that we've got a worship team of like 80 musicians and singers, and we've been running with 12 of us for the last
Yeah.
nearly 2 months. And as much as we've enjoyed it, the 12 of us or whatever, at the same time, it's like we miss the voices, we miss the extravagance of these larger bands and teams. That was the way we were doing things in times gone by. So yeah, it's totally different. Like, I tell you what, the first week of staring down the barrel of a camera and actually intentionally leading worship into people's homes was challenging. But it's funny how, when worship is your natural language, you just go to that same place as if you were leading in the congregation with a room full of people, or with a few people in a home group. It's the same heart and the same place, but I guess a different context that we're having to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. We were chatting a bit about this topic during the week in preparation for tonight's conversation, and you were talking about some of the things that God has really been speaking to you about in this season, and really drawing out some parts of what God intended the church to be that perhaps we haven't always put our focus on prior to this situation. So just wondering if you can share some of those lessons, I guess, that you've learnt during this season.
Yeah, look, I've been reading through Acts at the moment, and it seems to be a really great time to read through Acts, because the early church, they met in homes. They did gather in the temple as well, and but at the same time, the vibrancy of the worship and the sound of the early church was a sound of a church who gathered in homes, and they loved the Lord from where they were.
Yeah.
And Acts 2, 42, I think it is. 46. They followed a daily discipline of worship in the temple, followed by meals at home. Every meal a celebration, exuberant and joyful as they praised God. And I just love this passage because it gives us a bit of an eye into the life of worship in the early church, because we see this rich times of where it says that there was a daily discipline of worship in the temple. And I think there's something for us all to learn of the value of gathered worship, and we're used to the Sunday service connection time of worship. But
Yes.
maybe the Lord's actually increasing the flourish of worship in the church, that is not limited to a Sunday, but more than that. I love the fact that the early church, and you think about the apostles and the disciples, what they did was they actually had a daily discipline. I'm challenged by that personally. I'm like, where are the daily disciplines in my life that actually value his presence? The daily disciplines of worship that just put him first in the midst of my life.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm reminded that I need to lead myself to that. Praise the Lord, on my soul. Lead myself to those places of daily discipline and worship,
Yeah.
and that's in a gathering sense. But then there's also the it was followed by meals at home, and everyone know good things happens around food, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It certainly does.
and that's where relationships build. That's where we honestly and vulnerably share our hearts with one another. um, in so many ways, the idea of meals at home is what our new album project is actually all about.
That's right.
Is about, what does it feel like to be home? What does it feel like to be community? What does it feel like to travel together, with friends and I think so much of what the early church experienced was this vibrancy of community, of where they actually did life together around tables. And it says that every meal was a celebration. I just think, I've turned it into a routine of saying grace at the start of a meal. But what the Lord's actually desiring is that this rich celebration would actually break out in my home. I'm so challenged by that remembrance of Jesus, the work that he's done in our lives in that day, would actually be at the forefront of our imaginations. I'm stirred that we'd be a people, in my family, my home, and the people who gather around my fireplace, that we would actually stop and pray and remember Jesus. um, and to celebrate. I love too
Yeah.
that it says that there was exuberant and joy. It was joyful when they gathered around their tables. I think that the sound of worship that characterizes the church should be a sound of joy and celebration, because we have a savior, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. I've certainly felt like, as restrictions have been easing here in Melbourne, within my family, we've been talking about how we feel so much more intentional now about our catch-ups, because they are limited to small numbers of people, and because we haven't seen people for so long, that moment when you get to see people face to face and be in their presence and ultimately share a meal with them and share what's been going on has been an incredible experience for us. And so it's been really nice to break the habit of just really busy socializing, and just really make it
Yeah.
intentional and center it around our kitchen table and the meals that we have with people and the things that we share
Yes.
with each other.
Yeah, and I think just the intentionality of being together as a family unit more often throughout the week has actually helped us all reset the way that we want to host people as well, because it's like, actually, we have something to offer others because we've been cultivating something at home.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I think that's what it comes to when you actually, as musicians and singers, lead worship in the context of a congregation, the times that we gather, and we will gather again. I have no doubt. When the church gathers again, it actually comes from musicians and singers and leaders who actually, behind the scenes, have cultivated something rich with the Lord. They have history. They have that sense of, they've set the table of, I've tasted, I've seen He's good, and then we've got something to offer when we come to the table together.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell me, in isolation, have your family been experimenting with new recipes and practicing baking like ours have?
Oh, probably far too much. So Melody is an incredible baker. She loves to bake cookies and cakes. For my wife's birthday recently, Melody and I made a delicious cake where it was Toblerone cheesecake,
Ooh.
um, mocha cream, fudge brownie,
Oh,
vanilla cream, and then fudge brownie, and then I had like a mirror glaze over the top. It was like, oh my
that sounds
goodness,
very MasterChef of you.
it was very evil, but it was really delicious, and so that was fun. Karen's been doing sourdough for about 4 years, so she's the
Very
ultimate
good.
hipster, isn't she? But it seems to be sourdough's been the thing that a lot of people have been doing. We actually tried a new recipe of sourdough today, or Karen did, and it was delicious. So I've had my fill of bread today.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned before that we've been in the process of putting together a new EP, which incredibly and so prophetically we had named Home before any of this started, which really just speaks to how God led this whole journey has been and this project has been. Just wondering if you can share a bit about the EP. We're going to be launching it just under 2 weeks from today, and how significant it was to record a project around home during this season.
Yeah, look, it was really ironic at the time because we'd obviously been talking about this project around home, and
Yeah.
then we're all stuck in our homes, um, and there's heaps of creative projects that have been birthed out of these limitations, of people being stuck in their homes. And
Yeah.
just as a side note, I want to encourage creatives out there that sometimes the very thing that limits us is the actual thing that actually helps us frame the painting or the creativity that we're called to express. And
Yeah.
so, you think about a canvas, it's a limitation. It's like there's a size, but it's what you do in that space and with that space that actually helps. And I think
Yes.
what we did was we said, okay, the original project we were dreaming of looks it's called Home, but it looked a little bit different the way we were going to express it. Um, and 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 so what we did with the limitations was we were like, okay, well, what can we do? What is the Lord saying in this? And we felt like gathering in the foyer at church with a handful of people to make it safe and make it acceptable, and to release some songs that spoke to people in a really relevant way, and would equip our church with worship. Like if you put a fundamental reason why we release songs, it's we love being creative. We love singing songs and fresh songs and bringing a new song to the church. But I think bottom line is we love serving the church to give them a song to pour out their praise and love and affection to Jesus. So
Yeah.
um, so home became another way and platform that we could help connect with our church community, remind them of who we are when we're together,
Yeah.
because there's a really special part of who we are when we're together as a Stairway family. There's this vibe that happens. There's this sense of flow that happens in our worship, and I was just so excited in the home project to see how we were able to actually capture the live part of our worship. We've done a lot of
Yeah.
recordings over the years, but I actually feel like we captured some of that live essence of who we are.
Great.
And I think doing that in our building, was a big part of it. Doing it in that centerpiece, that foyer where everyone walks through, was a great reminder of this is for them. This is for them to find places of connection with the Lord. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. So obviously in this season, we've had to really change the way that we as a church do worship, and it's given us an opportunity to just really strip things back to the heart of worship. And that's what we called tonight's discussion. So just wondering if you can share with us a bit about what is that stripped back heart of worship. What is the essence of worship when we kind of take away all the busyness and the planning and the preparation and just come to Jesus with our praise and our worship? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's what life for me is, this constant unraveling of journey toward the Lord in this place of worship. For me, it's this constant discovery of the ends and the widths and the height and the depths of His love for me. And I think in so many ways, for me, the heart of worship and discovering new places of connection with the Lord, it is about being moldable in His hands, of discovering and I guess having my eyes opened by His kindness to see more of Him. And I love the idea that worship is an exchange between the created and the Creator. And it's our opportunity of expressing love and reverence and awe and wonder, of God, of who Jesus is. And it's the willingly giving. Romans 12, I give every part of my life as an offering to God, my daily offering of worship. And it's every song, it's every moment, it's every breath. That is the heart of its worship. It's bringing it to Him. And I think the precursor or the bottom line of that is that we need to see Jesus. We need to see Him for who He is. We need to have that constantly expanding view of God. And I just want to encourage people who are watching, just just to look at him, look at him in scriptures, look at him in creation, look at him in every aspect of who he is. As you discover him for yourself, Jesus wants to be known, and it's as we lift our eyes to you, that look to him, that our hearts come alive, and worship becomes that response to what we see in him. And uh, I, there's this really fun passage I was reading in Acts this week, and it reminded me what actually moves me in worship, my heart for worship. And I guess it starts with beholding him who is worthy. And so in Acts 17, Paul is speaking to um, uh, the city of Athens, and this is a city that's full of idols. It's the cultural, I guess, mecca of that region. There's idols everywhere. It's a confluence of culture, and he speaks to their culture and the people of that time by addressing their need for God. And in essence, he leads them to worship, and he says, I'm here to introduce you to this God so you can worship intelligently. Know who you're dealing with, the God who made the world and everything in it. This master of sky and land doesn't live in custom made shrines or need the human race to run errands for him, as if he couldn't take care of himself. He makes the creatures don't make him. Because this is the people who are making all these idols.
Yeah.
Starting from uh, the creatures don't make him. Starting from scratch, he made the entire human race and made the earth hospitable. So he's beginning to paint this picture of what God is like.
Yes.
And he made the earth hospitable with plenty of time and space for living, so we could seek after God and not just grope around in the dark, but actually find him. He doesn't play hide and seek with us. He's not remote. He's near. And I just love that picture that Paul, he addresses the people's heart desire, because there were people who loved the supernatural. They loved the idea of a God, but they hadn't found him yet, and so he begins to describe God. And so for me, what moves my heart to worship, and the heart of worship is beholding him. And what we see in that idea just there is that Paul saw something in God. He saw something that those people hadn't yet seen.
Yeah.
And I want to revel in the nature of God. And it goes on in Jeremiah, you're wondrously great, famously great. Who can fail to be impressed by you, King of the nations? It's your very nature to be worshipped. Look far and wide among the elite of the nations. The best they can come up with is nothing compared to you. So Jeremiah, he's a prophet, and he actually his prophetic word was a word of worship, and to prophesy to the people, he was actually declaring this is what he's like. And yeah, I could go on for ages, heaps of great scriptures, but another one I love is the idea that in Luke 2:20, you think about the shepherds who just had this angelic encounter with declaring that God was on his way and they were going to go check out this baby. And it says that the shepherds returned, glorifying, praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. And I think what happens when we behold and we spend our lives pursuing his nature and his kindness and his glory is we become those who, like the shepherds, were like, holy moly, have you seen how beautiful he is? They threw themselves on the ground. They worshipped. Another really great example is in 2 Chronicles, where Israel saw the fire from heaven fall and the glory of God fill the temple. And they fell on their knees. It says they fell on their knees and bowed their heads and worshiped, thanking God. See, the most natural posture of worship is to fall down before God, bowing heads and worship and thank God. But it starts with something. It starts with seeing God. So what moves me to worship is actually a rich discovery of his nature, a continual knowing and expanding of who he is. And that means becoming interested in him, And so the inner conversation of my daily life is actually like, when I'm walking through the bush, it's like, Lord, make me more aware of you. Tell me what you're like today. What is your heart for me today?
Yes.
When I read scriptures, Jesus, what are you like in scripture? When I'm with friends and relationships, Jesus, show me what you're like through my friend.
Yeah.
And what that does is it sows into our lives a richness, so that when we worship, we're actually coming from the depth of the knowledge of God. And out of the knowledge of God, we're like, Lord, I love you because I've known you. I've seen who you are. And worship is no longer rote or activity. It's actually a response to his
Yeah.
beauty and his nature. So sorry, I'm getting on my high horse.
No, it's great. It's really good. So you've shared with us, quite a few of the passages that have really inspired you and guided your worship through this season. I'm just wondering if maybe for my last question, I can ask you, are there any books that you've read or music that you've listened to that have also been really meaningful to you during this season and really inspired the way that you worship God and come to Him during isolation in worship?
Yeah, for sure. So, one in regards to books, I've I read Audible books, so
Yes.
I haven't been driving the car much, which means I haven't been reading as much,
Yep.
other than reading scripture. But I've been listening to, I don't know if you guys know the Bridgetown Church. It's John Mark Comer's
Yes.
podcast. I found that really great and really inspiring. He had one particular podcast, and in it he talked about this idea of having an undivided heart, and I felt it's so fitting with how busy the pace is of our culture that we live in,
Yeah.
um, and how busy the internal world of my heart is, and how and so David prayed. He says, Lord, give me an undivided heart. And I've found it so encouraging listening to John Mark. He's actually got a book about hurry and dealing with hurry in our lives, and how the impact of hurry can actually really challenge us. So I've just downloaded that one after listening to the
Great.
podcast. I'll just get my Audible open, then I can actually show you. Here we go. Yeah. And then what else? What were the other questions?
Any
So
music you've been
books,
listening to?
podcasts, music. I have a playlist of a bunch of songs, and I call the playlist Tender because for me, I really want songs that help me just sit in that place of connection with the Lord. And so some of my favorites at the moment um, are in that playlist are I really enjoyed Stephanie Gretzinger's new album
Yep.
called Forever Amen. It's super gentle and same in a lot of ways from song to song. But I think in this time where it's just been like, there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of tension in the atmosphere, to have a project that you can sit in and allow the Lord to minister to you has just been beautiful. John Mark Pantana, there's an album that he's done, Love Secrets, that I really enjoy.
Yes.
Ben Potter's stuff has been really good. He's got a album, what's it called? Reside, Ben Potter. So yeah, that's another one, really ambient type of worshipful stuff.
Great.
Another guy named John Lucas. I really love John Lucas's stuff as well. It's sort of like the indie folk, atmospheric,
Yes.
restful, worshipful type of stuff,
It's my kind of
which I
music.
really love.
Yeah, me too. That's great. Thank you for those recommendations. We might put them in the comments later for anyone who's keen to go and check out some of those books and some of that music as well. Jared, thank you so much for your time tonight. We're going to finish with our 5 quick favourite questions. So just give me the first answer that comes into your mind when I ask you, what's the favourite holiday that you've had?
We did New Zealand about 5 years ago, and we did 14 days going around the South Island, and we stopped and started at like B&Bs and hotels, and it was just like, it was an adventure. So it hit my adventure bucket, and also it was just beautiful family time, and it's stunning scenery. New Zealand all the way.
It sure is. Next one is, what's your favourite type of takeaway?
Oh, look, Um, I don't know. I just prefer making it myself, or I prefer going to the restaurant. I don't really do takeaway that much. If it's like a quick eat, look, maybe a maybe just like a. Everyone loves the pepperoni pizza at Domino's. Like it's like if you've got $5, you know you can get something takeaway. I can't remember the last time I had one of those, but I know it tastes good.
Great. What's your favourite TV show?
Melody and I have just been getting into Top Gear. There's a new British series at the moment,
Yes.
so the daddy-daughter time
Awesome.
watching Top Gear.
I love that. Our family show is Lego Masters in our house, but
Love
that
it.
also sounds good. What's your favourite song to dance to on the dance floor?
Look, look. The girls have lots of songs that play throughout the house. Melody always plays "Senorita" by Cabello, is it?
Yep.
There is a few other songs that she always plays. Obviously, with the young kids, they love ones like "Happy," the Pharrell
I was going to
Williams.
say,
So,
surely the Trolls soundtrack plays in your
oh yeah,
house.
absolutely. That's Savannah's favorite. But this morning she was actually listening to the all the ballet tracks by Emma from the Wiggles. So it's just
Oh
like,
yeah, we
all
get
these,
that in our
and she
house too.
listens to the first 10 seconds and then she like goes to the next one. It's working from home is awesome.
And the last thing is, what's your favourite thing about being home?
I looked down. I was working at my table today. I looked down, and Cora, who is our 1 year old, she just reached up to my leg, and she looks up to me with her big blue eyes and smiles. And so she's got these cute little toothy pegs coming through. I think just those little moments of connection with the girls has been awesome.
Awesome. That's a good one. All right, Jared, thank you so much for your time, and audience, thank you also for joining us tonight. If you want to catch this video or share it with anyone later, we'll leave it up here, and we'll also share the link on Instagram and YouTube in the next couple of days. If you're enjoying our Live from Our Living Room series, we would love you to share it with your friends, share it on your feed, tag people who you think might be interested in the different topics. And if there's a particular topic you'd like us to cover, why don't you comment in this one and let us know, and we'll make sure that we cover some of that stuff for you in the coming weeks. In a fortnight time, my guest is the amazing Kate Westwood, and we're going to have a very special home EP episode planned for you, because in 2 weeks' time we'll be launching our brand new EP. So we can't wait to see you then. And in the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.